In this video, we'll take a look at the else and finally statements that can optionally be used with a try except pair. Within the else block of code, the code will be executed if there were no exceptions, and the finally block of code will always be executed whether there are exceptions or not. So let's head over to PyScripter and check them out. I'm in PyScripter and I'm going to open up a new Python script. I'll remove the default code. I'll zoom in a little, and we're going to use our numbers list once more with 100, 50, 20, 10 and 0. We'll create the same for loop as the previous video. So for index in range 6, we will try to print 1000 divided by our numbers at each index. So from 0 to 5. We know this returns 2 errors. We'll accept the 0 division error and we'll print could not divide 1000 by the number at that index. We also know we have an index error to accept. So we'll accept our index error and we will print index at that index is out of range. So there's nothing here we haven't seen before. We will run that code and we can see it is handled gracefully that we could not divide 1000 by 0 and that index 5 is out of range. I'll clear that. I'm going to add in an else statement, and in here I'm going to print there were no exceptions. I'm going to run the code and we can see on each iteration we're hitting the else. When our number was 100 there were no exceptions. When our number was 50 there were no exceptions. When our number was 20 there was no exceptions, and when our number was 10 there was no exceptions. However, the else statement was not executed when we got our 2 errors. So for our first 4 numbers, we did not have the 0 division error. It is only when we hit the 5th number that we got our 0 division error, meaning we got an exception and the else statement was not executed. We then of course overstep the range by 1 and we get our index error exception printed, and because there was an error on that execution, the else statement is also not printed. I'll clear over here and I'm going to change the number in here to 1. So I've changed 0 to 1. I'm going to rerun the script. And you can see that this time around we removed the 0 division error. Sorry, we removed the possibility of the 0 division error. So we got that there were no exceptions for all 5 of our numbers. But then we hit an error with our out of range and the else statement was not executed. Clear over here. We also have a finally statement which will always be executed at the end of the try except blocks of code. And we will print I will always be executed. So when we run the script, we should see that we get the else statement executed 5 times, but the finally statement, the finally block of code here, should be executed 6 times because we are iterating over our list 6 times, one that goes past the length of the list itself. So let's run the code. We can see we get our 1000 divided by 100. There were no exceptions and the finally was executed. The same happened for 1000 divided by 50, 1000 divided by 20, 1000 divided by 10 and 1000 divided by 1. We then hit our index error. So the else statement was not executed. Our index error was executed, but our finally block of code is always executed. In this video, we took a look at the else and finally statements that are optionally available when using try except in Python. The else statement is only executed when there is no exception detected, whereas the finally block of code is always executed whether there was an exception or not.